Hey guys, welcome back to Dream Analytica. This is going to be part 2 of more on the Anima. If you haven't seen part 1, I suggest you, or I would recommend you go watch that. We were covering topics about the Anima in its negative aspect. So in order to catch up with what we're talking about now, I highly recommend you go watch that. Today we're going to talk about the Anima again, more about projection. We're going to talk about how the anima is projected, because whatever is unconscious is projected. Again, one of the main rules in psychology, particularly Jungian psychology. We're always going to repeat these fundamental rules or principles in psychology. That way, everything has sort of a fundamental basis of which you could derive some of these concepts from, because it's really complicated actually and very nuanced. It's understandable that some of these things might not make sense, but if you have some fundamental rules, it will help you understand these concepts a little better. So once more, whatever is unconscious is projected. Men who have an anima and is, for the most part, unaware of these unconscious entities. We like to call them entities because they are autonomous in their own right, meaning that the anima behaves as if she were a separate woman inside the man's psychology. It's actually not that difficult to visualize or imagine. You sort of already imagine her in many regards. When you're fantasizing about your dream girl or the ideal woman, could even say that men project the anima onto objects like cars or ships or possessions, material objects. There's a reason why we like to call these objects she. So we often call a ship, she's a beauty, you know. That's the projection of the anima. The Latin word for anima, or the English translation for anima from Latin is soul. So men will project their soul onto these things, onto these objects, onto these women. What that ultimately means is that the man is projecting an ideal image of his feminine side out there into the world. Now, this is neither a good or bad thing, but what we understand in psychology is that whatever is projected is thrown out. You're throwing something out. You're throwing a part of you out there. And that's not good, because it just makes sense, right? Like, in order to become whole, you need to have it. You need to have it. You can't have a full magazine if you're shooting, these bullets out there. You need to keep them. You need to stop projecting. And it's easier said than done, obviously, but it is worthwhile work. It is fundamental psychological work and essential for our development in psychology. Essential. This is absolutely essential. I've mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, we have different layers of our psyche in Carl Jung's model of the psyche. It starts with the persona at the very top. Beyond, it's like something that the ego manufactured, a social mask, in other words. And then you have the ego, which is the I, myself. We're not talking about ego in sense of pride here. We're talking about ego in sense of consciousness, ego consciousness. When we say I, that's referring actually to the ego. So not pride, it's about a perspective. So consciousness, ego. And then below that is the shadow. Below that is the anima / animus. So anima for men, the feminine component in man's psychology. Animus, the masculine component in feminine psychology, in women's psychology. And then below that is the nucleus, the center of our psyche, according to Jung. It is called, in Jungian psychology, the self, with a capital S, the self. Other names for it, depending on what culture you're from, it could be God, could be the universe, could be totality, the mandala. There are many names for the self, but that is the center of our psyche. And so what we're doing with this whole Jungian psychology thing, effectively, is we're trying to go back towards the center. See, once we were born, our center we developed a new center. Like if you take, when we were children, we were whole. But as we grew up, we slowly developed this other center, this other circle, which we call the ego. And there's sort of the separation. Our goal now is to try to return back to the center. wholeness, completeness. That is the goal of Jungian psychology. What does this have to do with the anima? So effectively, in order to descend back to our center, to try to find our inner God, our inner self, right? You have to understand the different layers first. You can't just descend immediately unless you're going through some horrible psychosis or terrific neurosis. Under those special circumstances, maybe there's just a rapid descent into the center once again, and the ego is destroyed. But for the most part, from a psychological development standpoint, we're trying to understand each layer because it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to understand about yourself. So we're trying to break it down. This isn't really common knowledge because people don't take it seriously, but this is how we approach it, and it works. So, and most oftentimes you'll see this in your dream. Like I mentioned before, in your dream, for the most part, if you've never analyzed your dream, you're gonna have quite primitive dreams, and mostly about your daily life, and then your shadow. And then if you start to have more developed dreams, then it's like levels in a game. Like the more you interpret correctly your dreams, the deeper you go, the harder the dream gets to interpret, to analyze, to figure. It's like a puzzle that gets harder and harder the lower and lower you go. So below the shadow, once you've integrated the shadow, then you meet your anima. And for women, your animus. That's not to say you can't meet them prior. It's just we're trying to sort it, organize it in a way that, okay, we're going to deal with the shadow first, because that's hard already. Understanding your shadow is very painful. You start sweating because it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I behaved that way, or I can't believe that guy that I hate is actually a part of me that I hate, and I'm really embarrassed to show these qualities to anyone. That's the shadow, and it's very painful. There's a lot of sweat involved because it's embarrassing, but not really, because the shadow has just as much positive qualities once you realize, wait, these are actually nothing to be ashamed about. I'm human, I can deal with that. And in actually integrating your shadow, you become more connected to other people, because then they realize, okay, he's just another guy that's just as human as I am, with just as many flaws, and that's right, that's proper. So the shadow sort of reconnects you back with your group, with the collective, with society. It helps people relate to you because you're human, and that's what your shadow does. It brings you back down to earth and grounds you. It's also a very powerful source of creativity and motivation. You could associate the shadow with like the Hulk. The Hulk's a complete idiot, but Bruce Banner's a genius. So you see the shadow relationship there. And then his integration, you saw in the Avengers, he takes the form of the Hulk, but he still retains Bruce Banner's intellect, the ego. So that's the integration process. He has that strength, and he could, obviously in the movie he didn't, live up to his full potential, but you could see that he has so much potential in terms of the integration process with the shadow. So once you integrate the shadow, then you move on to the anima, and you see her in dreams a lot. You see a woman in your dreams, that's your anima. You see a feminine character in your dreams, that's also an anima. Quite a few times, it's really strange, because in dreams, when you see an animal, for some reason, there's like this intuitive understanding of what the sex of the animal is. So when you see an animal like a cat or something, for some reason, your mind in the dream, even though you're not conscious, knows that it's a female cat or a male cat. But for the most part, in men, if you see an animal, it's most likely representing your feminine side, your anima. And depending on what type of animal, it could represent the sort of stage that you are developed or developing in your anima development. Excuse me, the terms mix up a lot. So once you reach your anima, that's a huge, huge step. But in order to make her conscious, remember, like I said, whatever's unconscious is projected. So in order to make her conscious, all you have to do is just stop projecting her. Easier said than done. And we'll get into that in just a moment here, but I want to get to the last level. So the anima, like I showed you in the model of the psyche, is closest to the self, the center. She acts as the mediator, the psychopomp. She quite literally will hold your hand and walk you towards your inner center. That's, in her positive sense, her goal. That's extremely powerful if you really understand that visual interpretation. It's no different than, in a mythical or metaphorical sense, a king who has found his queen, and now they, rule together their kingdom. The kingdom representing the totality of the psychology. So extremely powerful, that image for men, if you're wondering. This is why we have such a powerful image of wanting to be the protector or the rescuer. And because we don't know that that mythology works within us or exists within us, we project it outward, hoping we could save a woman's life. Equally, the woman needs to be saved, rescued, like as part of the mythology goes. And that's where that sort of, you see it everywhere. We project it everywhere. Like, we watch superhero movies because of this. We love those Instagram reels where it's about this knight character and he's noble and he's, protecting this soft feminine figure. I can try to find an image and share it with you here, where the knight is like embracing this very feminine character in white, That's where it comes from. It's part of our mythology that is running in the background. We're just searching for it out there in the real world, when in fact it exists within our psychology. And the reason why quite a lot of men, including myself, felt empty for so long is because we were projecting it outward, not realizing that, no, it's actually in us. The story is being played out within us. It's our own internal feminine that we need to protect, that we need to rescue from the dangers, from the mother, from the dragon. I spoke about the dragon in the previous video, really important, by the way. That's the mother complex. So in order to rescue the queen, our princess, from the dragon, the mother complex, we need to go on this very dangerous, very treacherous journey. And this journey is occurring within our psyche. It's a journey to rescue our soul. You need to realize that. And it's going on psychologically, which means the development is going on psychologically. We have a lot of rituals in old cultures where they, in order to initiate, in order to become a man, they have to go through this rite of passage. Rite de passage in French. It's a rite of passage in order to do that. What happens is, when you do it out there, it happens psychologically too. So we're just trying to rescue our soul, simply put. So back to projection, or actually, before I go to projection, I just want to go back to what I was saying. So she guides you towards your soul. She's the mediator. You can't have her guide you to your soul if she's not in a good state, if she's angry at you, if you've neglected her, if you've psychologically raped her, if you've abused her in any way, if you've repressed her. A lot of men repress their feminine side, and you see these men on social media all over the place. I don't know if I have a saved clip here, but if I do, I'll post it here. What happens is that these men who repress their feminine side, they're overly masculine, right? They're overly tough. They think they're so tough. But as a matter of fact, psychologically speaking, their feminine side is undeveloped, which means that they're extremely sensitive, extremely sensitive. You could say a few words, like you just hit them with something about their appearance because they're so vain, that their feminine side usually tends to be very narcissistic as well. So you hit them with something about their appearance and they'll be, inside it just completely shatters because they're so vain. It's a fact. You could hit these guys very easily with just a few words and they'll be like trying to fight you. Like, they're so sensitive, very picky, very touchy. And they have really terrible mood swings as well, because the anima is being repressed. Again, because they're projecting their anima. You could see it from their speech too. So what they want, like some of these guys that, tout about how the feminine should behave, how women should behave and all that, like as if they knew, they have no any clue about psychology. So they definitely have no idea. But let's say they talk about how the woman should be. Like, they want a virgin, they want this low body count, that's a projection of their anima. Like, they have this internal image of like this perfect goddess, Virgin Mary figure in their psychology, and they're projecting that outward. That's not human, that's a projection. So they're projecting their own inner feminine deity outward, and they lose it. So they're effectively, they have no soul because they projected their own femininity outward. The soul, the anima, they projected it. It's gone. It's unconscious, so they projected it. So don't do that. What you want to do is understand that image that you're throwing out there is a part of your own femininity. That's your soul. That's the soul image. And if you throw it out there, you lose that part of yourself. Then what happens in the negative sense is you no longer see women as women. You see them as goddesses. You fall in love with, let's say, a real human girl, woman, walks by, and you're projecting this inner goddess deity. She just walks by, catches that projection. You fall in love with this girl. You think you've fallen in love with the actual girl. You've fallen in love with what you are projecting onto that girl. That's very important for you to understand. And just being aware of it, it'll happen. Like it still happens to me. But the only difference is that I'm aware of it. And then I could easily turn it off, because then I understand, like, okay, wait, there's a whole human being behind that projection, that image that I'm putting onto, overlapping on top of this girl. There's a whole human being that gets sick, that has bad breath in the morning. You're forgetting all these nuances about the human qualities that will get old one day, that will need to be taken care of, that is emotional. The inner goddess deity, she's stoic almost in my image of the anima. She's rather peaceful, stoic, very calm, very soft-spoken. The real woman that I have projected it to could be loud, could be extroverted, could be the complete opposite. But the projection is so strong, the man tends to ignore all those other things because the image is just so powerful. It will take quite a lot for that image to be broken. But once it's broken, the man wakes up from this like daze, this spell, and realizes, holy hell, where the hell have I been? Like, who is this person? Quite literally, who is this person? Or he wakes up and still doesn't realize he has this feminine side and and let's say he's very deep down in the relationship now, meaning he's married now, probably has kids, throws out that projection one more time, and then cheats on his partner. That's the power of projection. The other problem with projection in its negative sense, because it can be positive in some way, but I won't get into that right now, maybe later. But in its negative sense, what happens is when you project your image of the eternal feminine onto a real woman, especially it's in the feminine nature's tendency to fulfill expectations by her community, by her group. That's just a part of nature, unfortunately, whether we like to admit it or not. That is just how it is. Women are more socially attuned, relatedness, the eros function. So a woman likes to comply with her environment as best she can, though that may cause like quite a significant neurosis, particularly if the society is unwell, if the collective is unwell and she's trying to comply to this sick system. It's very difficult for a woman. But let's say that she likes to comply with her environment. What that ultimately means is that if she loves you and you project this image onto her, she's going to try to fulfill that demand. And now you're starting to see where the neurosis comes from in terms of women and why they are so miserable in relationships. Because men unconsciously project this goddess deity onto their woman and expect her to fulfill that, not realizing that does irreparable harm and damage to the woman's psychology. Because she cannot live to those expectations. She's not a goddess. She's not going to be beautiful all the time. In terms of appearance, obviously, internally she could be beautiful all the time. But in terms of appearance, she's not going to be able to live up to those expectations. I'm not excluding myself from any of these projections, by the way. I was part of the problem too. We're all sort of naive in this psychological game. I had to learn about these things. I had to learn about the harm and damage that I caused from projecting my anima onto women. It is my fault, but at the same time, it also isn't my fault, because just like a kid who doesn't know any better, we misbehave. We're all to some extent, complicit in our sin. So I am not excluding myself. I did this. I have hurt women because I have projected my anima onto them, expecting them to fulfill the role of this eternal feminine figure. And when they didn't live up to those expectations, I started behaving really badly, poorly towards them. Equally, they projected their animus onto me. It's not all the blame of the man if he does this. The woman can also equally be blamed in terms of her projecting the unrealistic expectations of the God image of man onto her real man. There's no way he can fulfill those expectations. So there's this thing that's going on. This is why in the very first video I did on the Animus, I said we have a choice as a society to either reveal the inner man or the inner woman in order to have better relationships. What is happening now in the world, you can see it. Birth rates are declining, relationships are falling apart. The divorce rate is like 50% or something. It's absolutely horrific. Dating has become so painful. We have social media that is spewing out a lot of this nonsense information, telling women to behave in a certain way, telling men to behave in a certain way, just filling our minds with complete poison and nonsense that all we have to do is look inward and understand our own inner femininity as men, and women understand their own masculinity. That's where the truth lies. The truth lies in your own psychology. You don't need to absorb any of that nonsense on social media. Whether it may sound true, whether it's true in the collective sense, it may not be true for your individual purposes. It may not be true for you because you are so complicated and nuanced. And as an individual, those rules will sound like they apply, but they apply to a statistic. Remember that. They apply to a statistic. A lot of these women who spew out relationship advice, that's their animus. It loves generalizing things. We. But no I, the individual, the personal feelings. It loves playing with words that apply to statistics, to a group of people. The whole individual is lost whenever you are in a collective. We all know that. So just remember that it sounds good, it may even feel good, but it's nonsense because it's part of a collective and you are not a collection. You are an individual. Your soul is unique. Your spirit is unique. You need to remember your own individuality. And it's going to be hard, but it's absolutely necessary. So please, please remember that you are an individual. Men, we need to stop projecting our anima outward and recognizing that she exists inward. That's not to say that we won't project. It just means that just be conscious of it. Just be aware that you are throwing these images out there and that the woman cannot live up to those expectations. That's exactly the same reason that we watch porn. We're projecting that image as well, on the very primitive anima image, onto images and films. A man who has not developed his feeling side will often engage in those activities because he doesn't understand feelings to that degree yet. Ultimately, what we want to do in order to integrate her is understand, first of all, her existence. Second of all, the role that she plays in our daily behavior, in our moods, in our emotional intelligence, and most importantly, in our meaning, in our creativity. She plays a significant role in our creativity. So what happens, again, is if we don't recognize her, all this energy is sort of coming from her that we don't know what to do with, so we throw it out either onto real women, we throw our soul onto objects like cars, we collect all these things that are beautiful, just like our soul is, because we don't know what to do with that energy. And most often we throw it onto sex, images, pornography, and stuff like that. So what you have to realize, that creative energy that is being thrown into pornography, and what you could do with that information is realize, okay, wait, so if that's just energy, and I'm throwing it onto pornography, and pornography is ruining my life at the moment, I'm so addicted to it, can't stop. What you have to realize is that's just energy, and you're just trying to release that energy. You're just trying to release that energy. So what you could do is realize what your anima is. She's the creative source. So it's probably what is happening is your anima wants to come out. She wants to express her creativity, like sex is a creative act for men. Channel it somewhere else. And we're starting to get now towards the positive anima. As I mentioned from the first video, we're going to slowly progress from the negative to the positive anima. You want to channel that energy into a creative outlet that is essential to understanding your anima. So once you understand, okay, I'm projecting my anima now onto pornography, let's see what happens if I do some creative work. That's not to say you're not going to be aroused or sexually, have sexual energy at all. It just means that you can now understand that this energy can be used for something more productive than just self-gratification. That energy, now you're moving into creative endeavor. Whatever the creative endeavor is, that'll be a lot healthier for you. So it could be writing, poetry, art, painting, drawing, sketching, building something. As long as you're creating something. Music's a really good one. I do music, I do drawing, I sketch a lot. I cook, actually. Cooking is really good, a good way to do that, because you get to reward yourself at the end by eating the food that you create. It's very difficult too, and unlike just sitting there, you're moving a lot as well, and it's a lot of creative energy in trying to plate the dish. So cooking is a really healthy thing. Cooking should be a necessity for every human being, by the way, men and women. So I cook really well, actually. Cooking is a good one. Anything creative, like jewelry, woodwork, carpentry, stuff like that. Jesus was a carpenter, had a really good relationship with his feminine side. There's not much text on it about Buddha, or I haven't read about it, but that's what you want to do. You could utilize that sexual energy, take back the projections, use it for creative endeavors. That's a very healthy way. And now that gives you a compass. That gives you a whole understanding of how your psychology is working. It's just energy. It's just energy. Once you sort of see the world in terms of energy, everything makes sense. People, things. It's all just where you're putting your energy into. So you're just putting your feminine energy into something that is productive. And what you realize too, almost immediately, is because you release all that energy into the creative work, the sexual desire lessens. Doesn't disappear, sure, but it lessens a lot. And you have something now out of it. You have a product of something that's finished. Again, it's just energy. So we're sort of gearing towards now the more positive aspect as we shine a light on her. So that's the video I have for today about anima projection. I hope you found it helpful. Again, I developed an app where you can check some of this information out. It's more nuanced there, so it'll help you cover anything that I might have missed. That's all I have for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the third part. This is going to be a 4-part series. So I think what I'm going to do with the 4th part is show some clips of men and their anima in action, as I did for women and their animus, by showing some Instagram reels or something like that. But yeah, stay tuned for the next one, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. Leave a comment. If you have any questions about anything that I have said in this video or the last, leave a comment. You can contact me directly on my website if you want it more personalized. You could also reach out to me on my website if you would like to, if you're in a situation where you need help, especially with your dreams. So don't be shy. Feel free to reach out, and we can work on your anima together if that's what you need at this moment. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you for watching.